Hey everyone, welcome to episode 339, Teaching Empathy. Welcome to the Harmony in the Home podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Hutchison. I'm a counselor, a life coach, and most importantly, an imperfect mom doing this work right along with you. And my goal on our podcast is to go from chaos to calm, feel less frazzled, and have more fun within your four walls to have more harmony in your home. Hey everyone. So I love this topic, especially around the holidays, because it's hard to teach empathy because it's such a second layer, second tier emotion, and no one is born with empathy. So we have to teach it to our kids. And the best way to teach anything we want to teach is through, say it with me, modeling. So I'm going to let you listen to something that's really, really good in a way that you can teach it. But before we start talking about that and letting you listen to this beautiful clip, I want to talk to you about herbal face food. If you have any skin conditions whatsoever, it is the greatest product I've ever used on my skin. And I've used all the stuff, not really the high-end stuff, but I've used all the Walgreens, Target, CVS, that kind of thing. And so I love herbal face food. And if you have any type of sun issues or sun damage or eczema or rosacea or acne, it is so good for wrinkles and just softening your skin. I guess that's the best way for me. That's my favorite thing about it. You can go to herbalfacefood.com, use the coupon code Harmony20, and you'll get 20% off your first order. How about that? Us having a coupon code. So today we're talking about empathy, which is a really hard skill to teach, but I think if we're conscious about it, we can really teach it in a very intentional way. And I love this Instagram page I found called The Parenting Reframe. And she talks about teaching empathy and how to do it. And I'm going to let you listen to it. And then I want to then we'll talk about it on the other side of it.
If you have school-aged kids or older and you are trying to teach them more ways to be empathetic or to practice empathy, I'm going to share the phrase that I used to use with my kids when they were younger, and we still say it today, and it's really effective, and I'm going to unpack exactly how I would do this. But the phrase we commonly said was, "We don't know their story." And I used to say this all the time to my kids when they would come home from school and they would say something like, "So-and-so got in trouble today, he's bad." Or "This girl did this, so she's bad." And there was a lot of sort of binary thinking around seeing how a student or a classmate presented or did something, and then as a result, they just determined whether that kid was good or bad. So I said to them one day, it's not really fair to think of it that way because we don't know their story. We don't really know them completely. And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Well, let's think about you. Let's look at when you feel really, really tired. Do you always make the best choices? Do you always say the best thing? Are you sometimes crabby? Are you grumpy? Do you sometimes wish you could take a choice back? Have you made mistakes?" And they were like, "Yeah, that's true." And I said, "But if somebody just looked at you for those 10 minutes and they said you were bad, that would be unfair because they don't know that when you're tired, you feel that way, or maybe they didn't know the kind of day you had." So I said, it's not about absolutely having to understand what's going on, but when we remind ourselves that we don't know somebody's story, it's important because we have to practice compassion always. So feel free to use it, but it's something we use, and they've used it back on me now that they're adults. There are multiple times that they'll say something to me like, "Mom, we don't know their story," and we do definitely practice that. So feel free to use it. Let me know what you think.
So I love all that she says, and I'm trying to think of when my kids, because I would consider my kids very empathic, and sometimes you have deep feeling kids where they're born empathic and they have so much empathy that sometimes they have too much empathy where they're always affected by other people's emotions. So if one of my kids, when we were in a grocery store 2 aisles over, if there was a child crying, my toddler would be like, make them stop, make that baby stop. I can't hear her cry. They were so upset by the other toddler crying. And so when you have a child who is deeply feeling like that, that they're naturally born empath, and they're going to be drawn towards people who are more takers and not as empathic because it's the yin and the yang. So just know that about your child. And so with children like that, you want to kind of teach them how to make boundaries and how to put almost like shutters around that they're not affected so much that it ruins their day. So it's finding that Goldilocks balance. Now, if you don't have a child who's naturally empathic, that's pretty normal too, because they're not born with this skill or this gene. It's a temperament, so to speak. And so a great way to teach it is always teaching it by modeling it. For like, if you see the lawn people, oh wow, look how hard they're working, those lawn people, and it must be so hot for them. Could you imagine doing that for 8 hours? That must be so hard on them. What would you do if you had to do that? And then so it just kind of gets them out of their own head, and it kind of gets them out of their own brain and has them thinking about other people. Now, another way is to, like she was talking about, like, we don't know their story. I like we don't know their story because it also stops the compare and despair right in its tracks. Because your kids will compare you to other families and say, well, they're allowed to do this, or they're allowed to have this thing, or they're allowed to not have this thing, or they're allowed to stay up this time, or they're allowed to have this much screen time. And you always can come back with the same thing. We don't know their story. So I like we don't know their story because it teaches empathy and we don't really know what's going on. And usually when someone mistreats us, it has nothing to do with us. So it kind of helps us teach. I love that one-liner. I love one-liners in general because it helps to kind of reframe our own brain and keeps us conscious. And it also helps us to get out of other people's pools, other people's business, other people's lanes. And so when we can teach that by modeling it, then it becomes their mantras. The way we speak to our kids becomes their inner voice. So when they start to do compare and despair, or when they start to think like, why is that person doing this? Or why is that person doing that? Then they can kind of get out of that compare and despair, and they stay in their own lane and be like, we don't know their story, because it becomes so automatic, because they're like, what would mom say in this situation? Mom would say, we don't know their story. So mantras are really good to teach kids. So then they have mantras when things happen to them. And I love the comments on this video. Claudia says, instead of judging, be curious. When someone does something different, wonder why, versus labeling them as weird or XYZ. That's so true, because we're so quick to judge and like, oh, they're a narcissist, or they're a loser, or they're a selfish, or like, just be super curious and not so furious of like, we have no idea what's going on with them, and we have no idea how they were raised or what kind of messaging they were receiving when they were growing up. Because we're also we all think that we were all raised the same way. We can't ever think that like, wow, there's actually people out there that like abuse their kids or neglect their kids or don't like their kids or XYZ. That's really hard for us because it doesn't compute with us. But there are kids and there are grown-ups that you're hanging out with that were raised in families where their parents did not like them for no reason. And you might have been raised in a family where nobody liked you, but you're doing self-work now. So you realize like, oh, that was their projection onto me versus me and my value, my worthiness. I love, like Wolfgang Mom says, I wish all people, schools, public, who keep pushing empathy would actually teach the difference between empathy and sympathy. You cannot empathize 99% of anyone. You can be compassionate, but the word is sympathy. Fancy Pants says, we will definitely use this. I always remind my girls, 1 and 3 years old, to be kind. I don't say nice. I remind them to be kind to each other and those around them. Praying God continues to give me wisdom and patience to show my children to be empathetic and kind. The best way to teach your kids how to be empathetic and kind and be patient is to be empathetic, kind, and be patient, because then that's all they know. Philly says, I substitute teach usually 5th and 6th grade. I tell my students, be kind. You never know what someone is going through. They always look as if they really take that in. Because we can see that now as grown-ups, but kids don't know that naturally. Because they're very egocentric and they think that the way that they're being raised is how everybody else is being raised too. Just like we as adults can't imagine something different, they as kids definitely cannot. The Perfect Picker says, there are 2 lessons here. The lesson of empathy and kindness, and also the lesson of no matter how you're feeling, you still have choices, and the choices reflect who you are to others, and they also have consequences. Both lessons are important. Kindness first, but always there is also another important lesson about choices and responsibility. So true. And this is good advice for any age, because we're always trying to figure out other people. But if we stop trying to figure out other people and just be like, you know what, I don't know what's going on in their brain. So then when you act a cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, or I act a cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, someone will give me that same grace and compassion and be like, oh, I don't know what Kelly's going through. She must be going through something, because this attitude, this behavior, that little whatever she just did, that does not match. Or they don't know me well enough and they're like, wow, that girl is XYZ. And it's okay that they put labels on me and they don't have compassion and empathy, but I do want that. And so the best way to get it is to give it. So when you give something to other people in your own brain, you will most likely receive it, because then that's the projection and the lens in which you see the world. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye. Hey mamas, thanks for listening. If you had any ahas, clicks, or those lightning bolt moments while listening, you have to check out my free parenting bootcamp, where we take all of this to the next level and we try to create even more awakenings for ourselves so that we can connect more with our kids and never yell at them again. You can sign up at www.coachingkelly.com. And if you really want to fill up my love cup, send me an email of what your aha was, what your click was, what was that lightning bolt moment while you were listening. I want nothing more in life than for you to have harmony in your home and to learn how to be an imperfect mom like me, which allows your kids to be imperfect too, each and every day. Thanks for listening.